And I think it's also important to remember that God is fair. You know, that's what you touched on at the beginning of this kind of statement here is like how can you balance that love with that judgment? Well, and again, it's easier for a parent to understand.
Sure.
It's something that I understand as a parent now is like, I would imagine that because I guess there are some parents that don't, but when your kid does wrong, you punish them for whatever that may be. And every parent has their own different versions of punishment, and there's some probably that are wrong, but it doesn't matter. You punish them because you want them to teach them right?
Yeah.
And so you don't do that. You don't ground them. You don't take away their this. You don't whatever because you don't love them. It's because you do love them,
right?
And you want them to understand that what you did there was wrong. And so you have to learn to not do that. I was just actually talking to my son the other day about how, there are times when I get a little overexcited. I get a little more I get more angrier than I need to. And I told him and I'm going to do that, and I shouldn't, but I'm due because I'm an imperfect. Man, but the times that I'm going to get the most upset with you are when I've told you to do things that you don't do or don't do things that you do. That's when I'm going to get the most upset with you, and that's how God treats us. He makes it very clear, like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And he made all of those things very clear to us. And that's why when I'm trying to talk to both of my kids, like very clearly, hey, if you don't whatever in the next 5 minutes, X is happening, Try to make that very clear. And so when they don't, and, it's like, well, you don't get your tablet for the rest of the day or whatever. I'm like, hey, I told you. So you basically chose to disobey me, And so because of that, this is the consequences. Now, I'm an imperfect human being, so my punishments and my forgiveness is far worse, and imperfect. But thankfully God's is.
Right. Yeah. But I think a lot of us, you do a great job at painting, like looking at that from a parent's perspective. I think what most of us do is look at it from a child's perspective.
Right.
Especially a child with siblings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what we end up doing is thinking that God isn't quite loving because it's easy for us to feel like we're the ones who are always under judgment, and our brother or sister is the one who's never gets called out for what they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And like that doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
Right. The problem is we don't always know what conversations and what things God is doing with everybody that's there. But we don't see that as loving because it doesn't feel like equal love.
Yeah.
But again, we have to trust God that He's going to do what is just and what is right, whether we see it or not.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to find a way to rejoice when He forgives our brothers and sisters who have genuinely repented, right? We should be just as overjoyed as He is. We see that in the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son, when he returns and the other brother's like, wait, what? We're just going to let him come back, we're going to let him come back because he wants to be here, and we should celebrate that our family is whole again.
Yeah.
Right.